Culture Talk, where we discuss culturally relevant topics that you can use to start conversations about your faith. And I'm joined today with biochemist Fazale Rana. Welcome, Fuzz.
Hey, Sandra, thanks for having me.
You know, Fuzz, I hear you are going to be launching a brand new show from Reasons to Believe, and it's called Agree to Argue. Please tell us about this new show.
Yeah, well, thanks for asking about the show, Sandra, and your interest in what we're doing. I'm real excited about the program, as you mentioned, called Agree to Argue, and it's going to involve me, yours truly, as a co host, along with someone by the name of Steve McCrae. And Steve is a very well known non theist who has a background in philosophy and science to some degree. And of course, I'm a Christian and a biochemist. And so we are going to come together once a month for about an hour and a half and live stream a lively, hopefully friendly, but also challenging conversation with one another about important topics that I think people of both communities are going to be interested in. And then after the program is broadcast live, we're going to release segments of the program as recordings over the course of a month. So again, the program will appear once a month where there's recordings in between each live stream. And then we also are going to have opportunities for the audience to participate in the program as well through the chat feature. And then on top of that, we're going to also record a bonus feature once a month called The Good, the Bad, and the Huh, which is essentially looking at arguments that each of our respective sides make that we don't think are good arguments. And we're going to explain why we don't think those arguments are good and what could be done to maybe make that same point in a more effective way.
Wow, that is a lot to unpack. So this new show, it's going to be where? Like, where can people find it?
Yeah, well, we have an Agree to Argue YouTube channel so that people can subscribe to that and then can watch it live there. And then also, this is where we're also going to have the recordings released as well.
So just the whole premise of the show, Agree to Argue, I think that's fascinating because you as a Christian and then Steve as a non-theist, you're actually getting together to talk about these topics. I think that's wonderful. And I think, you know, our viewers are going to be excited to kind of shift over and check out that show as well. Tell us some of the topics that you think you might be addressing.
Well, the first program, we're going to simply take a look at the fact that when somebody claims to be a non-theist or somebody claims to be a Christian who holds to a creationist position, that many times those viewpoints are misunderstood by the other side, and that people that are non-theists don't hold monolithic beliefs. People that are Christians and creationists don't necessarily hold monolithic beliefs. So part of the first show is just going to be simply adopting a posture where we tried to understand one another. But we're going to take on all kinds of questions like, can you be a non-theist and actually be a morally good person? We're going to take on things like, do bad designs in nature invalidate the design argument? So these are the types of topics that we'll take on in the show. Each episode is going to have a new set of topics.
And you mentioned that viewers will be able to interact with the two of you. So what is that going to look like?
Well, we're going to have a chat feature on the program as well as a super chat feature as well. So we're going to, throughout the course of our conversation, look to see what viewers are saying and incorporate their questions, their comments into our conversation.
So the fact that we have you and Steve together, I think is a wonderful example because you're providing an opportunity for people to say, let's not be scared of just being in dialogue with those with different perspectives. So I love that. And I love that we're also going to have viewers able to chime in and ask questions. What are you anticipating as far as the interaction and how different that might be from having just Christians interacting with our content?
Well, I think first of all, it's really important, I've learned, to ask questions of people who hold different worldview perspectives than you hold. regardless of your own individual perspective. Because so many times we just simply make assumptions or we stereotype other people's views. And so the first part of respectful dialogue is really understanding the other person. But we live in a world today that is so polarized. And it's not only that we're polarized, but we've lost the capacity for civil dialogue. That when somebody holds a perspective that's different than ours, we can't be friends with them. We can't extend respect to them or to their viewpoints. And so, what we want to do in this program is show that two people, very different perspectives, can come together, can enjoy one another, and have a fun, intense conversation where we challenge one another, but we also look to find points of agreement, common ground, but in the same time, have a good time doing it and actually develop a deeper friendship with one another in the midst of our agreements, or sorry, in the midst of our disagreements. So that's why we're calling the show Agree to Argue, is that we're going to argue, not to find agreement, but to find understanding. But we're going to agree that arguing is a great way to understand one another when it's done kind of in the philosophical sense as opposed to the combative sense.
Right. And that is the point exactly, because we are in this kind of cancel culture, hate speech. We see a lot of that just being online and even face to face. It seems like we've kind of increased that approach culturally, that we are canceling people, we are calling them out, we are using hate speech. So I love that this show will actually put two people from different perspectives together to show what it looks like, as you're saying, to agree to argue, because it really does seem like we've kind of forgotten how to talk to each other, and instead we just talk at each other, and it doesn't really it's not effective.
Yeah, well, again, people should go to the YouTube channel Agree to Argue to subscribe. And then we have also a website, agreetoargue.com, and all of our social media handles are at Agree to Argue. So that's how people can find out about the show.
Something that I'm aware of just working at Reasons to Believe with you and being part of the development team for Agree to Argue is that I know we're going to have a code of conduct. And I think that that's really important. So, can you explain kind of the purpose behind the code of conduct and why we think we're going to need it for this type of show?
Well, so often when people again engage with one another on social media and YouTube, because of the anonymity, many times people resort to the worst possible tactics. And so we want to make sure that as people are participating in the program, that their participation is at a high level, that there's just certain expectations we're going to have of people that are in the audience that want to engage with us, that we want to show respect and extend dignity towards one another. It doesn't mean we can't ask hard, challenging questions of one another or disagree again sharply with one another, but we want to do it in a way that promotes understanding and that ultimately reflects respect and an extension of dignity towards one another.
Yeah. Well, I am really looking forward to the show, Fuzz. And thank you for coming here to talk about it. So again, if you want to check out RTB's new show, go to agreetoargue.com. Also be sure to find Agree to Argue on YouTube and on all social media platforms. Thanks again, Fuzz, for joining us.